Good morning students, welcome back to English class. So, Evans tries an O level. This is the story written by Colin Dexter. So, in this story, it happens like that in early March, the Secretary Examination Board receives a telephonic request from the governor of the Oxford prison to create an examination center in jail for one candidate named Evans. He started night classes in O-level German last September. He was the only one in the class. The secretary made other routine enquiries and promised to send all the forms and stuff. The cell of Evans was turned into examination room. A person from St. Mary Max was to work as invigilator. The governor did not tell the secretary that Evans the break had already escaped from prison 3 times. He would have done so from Oxford prison if there had not been unrest in the maximum security establishment up north. The governor of Oxford prison took personal interest to see that Evans got no chance to escape. One day prior to the examination, that is on Monday 7th June, Evans' German teacher shook him by the hand at 8:30 p.m. and wished him good luck. They met in the heavily guarded recreational block just across DB. At 8:30 the following morning, Tuesday 8th June, Evans had two visitors, Mr. Jackson, the senior prison officer on D wing, and Mr. Stephens, a burly, surly looking man only recently recruited to the profession. Mr. Jackson mockingly addressed Evans as Einstein. Evans' face was unshaved and he requested Mr. Jackson to let him shave himself. Jackson instructed Stephens to make sure that he took his razor out of the cell. Mr. Jackson told Evans that he got half an hour to smarten himself. He asked Evans to take off that filthy looking hat. Evans replied that it had brought him luck in life and requested to be followed to keep it on during the examination. So, at age 45, the same morning, the Reverend Stuart McLeary left his bachelor flat in Bourne Street and stepped out briskly towards Carfax. The temperature was considerably below normal. A long black overcoat and a shallow-crowned clerical hat provided welcome protections from the steady drizzle, which spattered the thick lenses of his spectacles in his right hand, and he was carrying a small brown suitcase which contained all that he would need for his morning duties. 2-hour examination was scheduled to start at 9:15 a.m. Two small square tables were set opposite each other. Two hard chairs were placed in front of the tables. Jackson told Evans that the governor himself was going to listen in. Jackson would be watching him like a hawk. He asked Evans to keep his nose clean. Evans nodded. He had his number 2 handkerchief lying ready on the bunk just before leaving his cell. Jackson wished Evans good luck. In the little lodge just inside the prison's main gates, the Reverend S. McLeary signed his name neatly in the visitor's book. From there, he walked side by side with a silent prison officer across the exercise yard to D wing. Here, he was greeted by Jackson. The big, heavy outer door was unlocked and locked behind them. The same was done to the heavy inner door. McLeary was now to be looked after by Stephens. Jackson murmured, "If he had got the razor." Stephens nodded. McLeary followed Stephens to the cell where Evans was kept. Stephens opened the peephole and found Evans completely engrossed in a textbook of elementary German grammar. Stephens took the key from its ring and the cell lock opened. It was 9:10 a.m. The governor instructed Jackson to tell Evans of the temporary little precaution. The governor thought that Evans might try to take advantage of McLeary. Evans had been got rid of any potential weapon. But what innocent McLeary? He might bring a jackknife. Evans might hold him a hostage with it. The governor phoned Jackson, who lightly frisked McLeary's clothes. Then he searched the content of the suitcase. He was puzzled to find a semi-inflated rubber ring. McLeary explained that he suffered from hemorrhoids, where he sat down for a long time. Then he found a paper knife at the bottom of the case. Very politely, he took it away. The examination started a little bit late. The governor heard the voices of the invigilator and the examinee. It was now 9:20. Evans objected to the presence of Stephens as it disturbed his concentration. The governor ordered Jackson to get Stephens out of that cell. That the examination began at 9:25. There was a great calm. At 9:40 a.m., the examination board rang through. An assistant secretary informed the governor that there was a correction slip which the dealing hand had forgotten to place in the examination package. The governor put him straight through to Mr. Jackson in D wing. Meanwhile, he checked whether the phone call was a fake or some signal or secret message. He dialed the number of the examination board, but he heard only the staccato bleeps of the line engaged. 2 minutes later, the governor heard some whispered communication in the cell. McLeary was dictating the correction. The governor had taken German in the sixth form. He remembered all about the arrangement of adjectives. Then he received a phone from the magistrate court. They needed a prison van and a couple of prison officers for a remand case. For the first quarter of an hour, Stephens had dutifully peered through the peephole at intervals of 1 minute or so. After that, every 2 minutes at 10:45 a.m., everything was still all right. Evans, with his pen between his lips, sat staring straight in front of him towards the door, seeking some inspiration from somewhere. Opposite him sat McLeary. His hair was amateurishly clipped pretty closely to the scalp. At 10:50 a.m., the receiver made a short, sharp sound. The governor realized that he had almost forgotten Evans for a few minutes. Evans was asking if he could put a blanket round his shoulders as it was a bit chilly there. McLeary told Evans to be quick about it. At 10:51 a.m., Stephens was surprised to see grey blanket draped around Evans' shoulders. He frowned slightly. He looked at the examinee more closely. At 11:20 a.m., the receiver once more disturbed the silence of the governor's office. McLeary informed Evans that only 5 minutes remained. The examination was almost over now, but something still gnawed away quietly in the governor's mind. He reached for the phone once again. At 11:22 a.m., Jackson shouted along with the corridor to Stephens. The corridor wanted to speak with him. The Stephens picked up the phone and listened to the rapidly spoken orders. Stephens himself was to accompany McCleary to the main prison gates. He was to make absolutely sure that the door was locked on Evans after McCleary had left the cell. At 11:25 a.m., the governor heard the final exchanges. He heard the door clang for the last time. He heard the door, the examination was over. Stephens walked beside McCleary to the main gates. His long black overcoat encouraged the illusion that he had suddenly grown slimmer. Stephens felt pleased that the governor had asked him and not Jackson to see McCleary of the premises, and the morning had gone pretty well. He re-entered the wing and opened the peephole of Ivan's cell. He saw a man sprawled in Ivan's chair. He saw a man sprawled in Ivan's chair in front of his closely cropped, irregularly tufted hair was covered with red blood, which had dripped already through the black small beard. It was now spreading over the white clerical collar and down in the black clerical front. Stephens shouted wildly for Jackson. The words penetrated McCleary's ears. He felt for his handkerchief and held it to his bleeding head. He gave a low moan and tried to speak, but his voice became gradually quieter and then stopped. Police and ambulance were called in. McCleary slowly raised himself. He found the German question paper on the table. He told Jackson to get the governor. He claimed to know where Ivan was. Almost immediately, sirens were sounded and the whole prison machinery went into action. Jackson and Stephens supported McCleary on either side. They met the governor in the prison yard. McCleary drew the governor's attention to the German question paper. A photocopied sheet had been superimposed over its last page. Originally it was blank. The German text was translated. It was an interesting reading. It contained the pain of action. Then what happened? A police car came to the doors of the prison. Detective Superintendent Carter came out and greeted the governor. Before the governor could explain anything, McCleary told the officer to go to Elsfield Way, where Evans, injured McCleary, accompanied the police. The governor read the last portion of the German text from Elsfield Way Drive to the Headington roundabout. The governor was angry at Jackson and Stephens. Evans had managed to conceal not only a false beard, a pair of spectacles, a door collar, and all the rest of his clerical paraphernalia. He also had a weapon with which he hit McCleary across the head. The governor was still concentrating on the last line of the German text. The word Nürnberg troubled him. It seems to be Newbury. He asked his driver to take Jackson and Stephens to St. Aldate's police station and contact Chief Inspector Bell there. The governor then went to his office and phoned Bell immediately. Bell promised to get him. Then what happened? The governor sat back and lit a cigarette. It has been It had been beautifully laid plan. However, it was careless of Evans to leave the question paper behind. The governor hoped to get Evans back with the help of the clue. Superintendent Carter informed him that McCleary had spotted Evans driving off along Elsfield Way, but had lost him at the Headington roundabout. He must have doubled back into the city. The governor said that he might be on his way to Newbury. He asked Carter if they had managed to get McCleary to hospital all right. So till here we have seen in the previous video, previous class. So let's begin from the page number 85. We have completed page number till 84. Now we are moving to the page number 85. So here he rapped out his orders to the driver, sent Altate's police station and step on it. Take Jackson and Stephens here. When you get there, ask for Bell. Chief Inspector Bell got that. So here in this first paragraph of page number 85, it explains that prison van came behind, but the governor did not move. He again looked down at the German text and tried to decode it. The word written, it meant New Grave. He tried hard to find the place and then finally decoded it to Newbury. He had got the place where Evans had escaped to. He then ordered the driver to take Evans and Stephens to St. Aldate's police station. He also instructed them to ask for Chief Inspector Bell on reaching at the police station. Moving to the next paragraph. He leaped the stairs to his office there at a time, got Bell on the phone immediately and put the facts before him. Well, we will get him, sir, said Bell. We will get him with a bit of luck. The governor sat back and lit a cigarette. You gods, what a beautifully laid plan it had all been. What a clever fellow Evans was, careless leaving that question paper behind. But then they all made their mistakes somewhere along the line. Well, almost all of them. And what's why very shortly Mr. Clever Evans would be back inside doing is once more. So here in this paragraph it explains that governor jumped the stairs to his office and called up the bell. He explained the entire situation to him. Bell said that he will catch him but with some luck. The governor sat on his chair and started thinking while he lit up his cigarette. He thought it was a nice plan but felt that Evans was careless to leave the question paper behind. He then admitted that all of them make mistakes like Evans and then reassured him that this mistake of Evans will again bring him back to the prison. Next paragraph. The phone on his desk erupted in a strident burst and Superintendent Carter informed him that McLeary had spotted Evans driving off along Elsfield Way. They had got the number of the car all right and had given chase immediately but had lost him at the Headington roundabout. He must have doubled back into the city. No, said the governor quietly. No, he's on his way to Newbury. He explained his reasons for believing so and left it at that. It was a police job now, not his. He was just another good for gullible governor, that was all. By the way, Carter, I hope you managed to get McLeary to the hospital all right. So here, erupt means flare up. Erupt means what? Flare up. Strident means what? Strident means what? Harsh. Strident means what? Harsh. Good for giggle means what? For a laugh. Good for a giggle means for a laugh. Gullible means what? Over trustful. So here, what happened? Once again, the phone rang very harsh on his desk. Carter informed him that McLeary had spotted him in a car at Elsfield Way. They chased him as they had noted down his number, but soon lost him at Headington roundabout. Governor informed him that Evans was on the way to Newbury. He then explained as to why he thinks he is going towards Newbury and then left it all on the police, as according to him his job was done. He had already become a laughing stock for others for being over trustful person. He also then inquired about McLeary being taken to the hospital. Now the next paragraph. Yes, he is in the Radcliffe Cliff now. Really groggy he was when we got to the examination offices and they rang for the ambulance from there. The governor rang the Radcliffe a few minutes later and asked for the accident department. McLeary, you say? He is a parson. I don't think there is anyone. Yes, there is. You will find one of your ambulance picked him up from Elsfield Way about. Oh, that, yes, we sent an ambulance all right, but we got there, the fellow had gone. No one seemed to know where he was, just vanished, not a sign. So, groggy means what? Weak. Parson means churchman. Vanish means disappear. So, here Carter said that he has been taken to Radcliffe Hospital. He also told him that McLeary had grown very weak when they took him to the examination office. So they rang up for the ambulance from there. Governor called in the hospital and inquired about the injured parson. They replied that they had sent the ambulance to bring the patient, but they found no there. Moving to the next page number 86. But the governor was no longer listening and the truth seemed to hit him. with an almost physical impact somewhere in the back of his neck. A quarter of an hour later, they found the Reverend S. McLeary securely bound and gagged in his study in Boat Street. He had been there, he said, since 8:15 a.m. when two men had called and enquiries in Newsbury throughout the afternoon produced nothing at all, and by tea time everyone in the prison knew what had happened. It had been Evans, but impersonating McLeary, who had walked out. It had been Evans impersonating McLeary, who had stayed in. So bound means what? Tied up. And gagged means what? Stopped. Gagged means what? Stopped. Impersonating means what? Pretend to be another person. Impersonating means what? Pretending to be another person. So here, when the governor heard about the disappearance of the parson, he did not hear anything more than from the other side. He had understood the whole truth and he was feeling a bit uneasy in his neck. After a gap of 15 minutes, they found the real Reverend McLeary, who was tied up by two men in his study at Broad Street since 8:15 a.m. The search in Newsbury resulted into nothing. It was clear that the man who was taken to the prison door by Stephens was not Evans, who had pretended to be McLeary. But Evans was the one who stayed inside the cell and pretended to be McLeary, who was in a pool of blood. The next paragraph of the page number 86. Fish and chips were delicious, and after a gentle stroll around the center of Chipping Norton, Evans decided to return to the hotel and have an early night. A smart knew that concealed wreckage of his closely cropped hair, and he kept it on as he walked up to the reception desk of the Golden Lion. It would take a good while for his hair to regain its former glories, but what the hell did that matter? He was out again, wasn't he? A bit of bad luck that when Jackson had pinched his scissors, for it had meant a long, tricky operation with his only razor blade the previous night. But he had his good luck too. Just think, if Jackson had made him take his bobble hat off, phew, that really had been a close call. Still, old Jackson wasn't such a bad fellow. So here stroll means what? Stroll means walk. Wreckage means remains. Wreckage means what? Remains. Bobble means small ball attached to a hat. Bobble means small ball attached to a hat. So here, now the story is moved up to Evans. After having delicious fish and chips and a small walk near Chipping Norton, he decided to go back to his hotel room to sleep early. He was wearing a new hat that had smartly hidden his short hair, which seemed as a remains of hair. He kept wearing it on his head even when he reached the reception of Golden Lion Hotel. He then recalled his previous night when Jackson took away his scissors and he had to cut his hair with a razor blade. That was a quite bad luck, but then he thought about his good luck when Jackson asked him to remove his hat and how he managed to stop him from doing so. He then concluded that old Jackson was not that bad. Now the page number 86, last paragraph. One of the worst thing funny really had been the beard. He had always been allergic to sticking plaster, and even now his chin was irritatingly sore and red. The receptionist wasn't the same girl who had booked him in, and but the change was definitely for the better. As he collected his key, he gave her his best smile, told her he wouldn't be bothering with breakfast, ordered the daily express and asked for an early morning call at 6:45 a.m. Tomorrow was going to be another busy day. So here allergic means what? Sensitive, and bother means concerned about. So here it says that one of the worst things that seemed funny to him was using a false beard. He was sensitive to the sticking materials. He was sensitive, so he was allergic to using the sticking materials, but he had to use it for sticking up the beard. It was now irritating him as he had reddened his chin and he was feeling pain there. When he reached the reception counter, he found that it was not the same girl which was there at the time of his booking. But he thought that his change was good, and he then told her that he is not concerned about morning breakfast. Ordered a newspaper named Daily Express and asked to wake him up at 6:45 a.m. as tomorrow was another busy day for him. So we will continue in the next class from page number 87. Until then, keep watching, keep reading. Bye.